Investor, educator, and author Robert Kiyosaki has changed millions of lives all over the world. His book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has been on the New York Times bestseller list for over 5 years. We all know that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing, and Social Security and Medicare are in a financial mess. And just affording to live is getting expensive. So how does a person get ahead financially? The answer is raising your financial IQ and having your money work for you. Here's Robert Kiyosaki with Rich Dad's Teach to Be Rich.
Okay, moving on. How many people have ever heard these words? Repeat after me. Okay, this is good advice if you have very little financial education, but it's terrible advice if you're financially educated. So let me explain how I came up, where I heard this is that I was watching this very popular morning program that goes all the way across the U.S., and they have the very good-looking couple, you know, the host and hostess, and they're saying, okay, it's the start of the year, and this time we're going to have the financial expert of planet Earth come in and give us financial advice for the new year. So, welcome, so-and-so, financial advisor, and everybody goes on hand and all this, you know. So this guy pops out, and this is 1999, and he goes, okay, ladies and gentlemen, my financial advice for the new year is work hard. Save money, get out of debt, invest for long-term, diversify. And the young host and hostess go, oh, that's such brilliant advice, big hand, big hand, big hand, big hand. So the next year they invite him back again, and again Freddie Financial comes popping back up there and says, what's your advice for the new year? And he says, I advise people to work hard. And again, the magical couple on the TV show, oh, wonderful, wonderful. Where does he come up with that great financial information? I just don't know where he comes up for it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Then after the year 2000, the market started to crash. Remember that? It started to go down. And so they invite Freddie Financial back on again. They say, and welcome for the new year. He's going to give us the advice of how to handle this tough financial situation. And so Freddie Financial comes out, and one more time he says, my advice for this year is, and did this stop the market crash? No, the market kept going, and between the year 2000 and 2003, the people that followed this advice, millions of them, many people with 401ks, lost an estimated $7 to $9 trillion worth of their savings. They got wiped out. That same period, Wall Street paid the highest bonuses ever to their people. To me, that's unconscionable. But the reason it's unconscionable here is most people think that this is investment advice, and what you'll find is primarily a sales pitch. It is not good investment advice. Now, I'm not saying don't follow it. I'm saying if you want to be rich, this is bad financial advice. And what I'll be going into is why I say it's bad financial advice. Number one, when you look at work hard, the reason work hard makes no sense is because most people work hard over here. The reason you don't want to work hard here is because the more you work for money, the tax laws are written against anybody who works for money. If you're a laborer, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or an employee, the harder you work, the more money you make, the higher your tax bracket is. So these people get wiped out. The tax breaks are over here for people who have people work for them or their money work for them. That's the big difference. Save money is the next biggest one here. The reason save money is really, really bad advice is very simply because the world changed in the world time 1971. In 1971, there was a man named President Nixon who took office. And what happened in 1971 was Nixon turned our money into currency. So after 1971, we're no longer saving money. After 1971, we started saving a currency. And the problem with a currency is a currency is just printed by the government. It's called fiat currency. And what happened in 1971 was Nixon took us off what's called the Bretton Woods Agreement, which started in 1944 and ended in 1971. Up until 1971, the U.S. dollar was actually pegged to a thing called gold. I forget the exact dollar amount, but that's one of the biggest problems. So after 1971, our school systems forgot to tell people that we're no longer saving money, we're saving a currency. And if you've studied economics, this is what a currency is designed to do. It's very simple. Over 40 years, a currency is designed to fall. Let's say you have $1. A currency is designed to drop in value to about 5 cents. So you never get ahead financially because the dollar is dropping. So after 1971, you shouldn't be saving money anymore because you're saving a currency. Now somebody can say, well, how do you know this is true? Is the reason I know this is, I'm not saying this is 100% accurate because there's other factors to it, is my father's house purchased in 1967 or something was $50,000. And today that house is now worth $1.5 million. It's the same house. In fact, it's in worse shape now. But the house did not appreciate in value. What happened is the dollar depreciated in value. So the problem with the currency is it's always losing value. Now, the other way of looking at it is this, is how much has the dollar lost in the last 10 years, is this. You look at between 1995 and 2005, the way you can tell what your dollar is worth is very simply, it just kept coming down, the dollar. And what you can peg it to, or look at the next thing, is between 1995, gold was approximately $250 an ounce, and gold today is $500 an ounce. That means your dollar's purchasing power has gone down by 50%. So you've lost that much money by saving money. Now the reason all of this can happen is very simply because the government can print money faster than you can save it. That's why Kenny was saying there's so much more money out there right now looking for places to put their money, yet people still save money, even though it's going down tremendously in value. The other way of looking at this is, the question is, when the president or the Federal Reserve Chairman gets on board, he talks about this word here. How many people have heard them say there's no inflation? Okay, how many people realize that things are going up in price? Okay, so the question is, how is it that our leaders can say there's no inflation? And the reason they can say that is very simply because the Federal Reserve Bank is only charged with tracking CPI, what's known as Consumer Price Index. The only thing they're concerned about is the price of consumer goods, i.e. this is consumer goods, this is consumer goods, my watch are consumer goods. Consumer good prices are coming down very simply because China is coming up. But what they don't tell you is this, is that the reason they can say that there's no inflation is because of consumer prices, but if you study basic accounting or economics, they are not charged with tracking asset value. So what's happening is asset prices are going up and consumer prices are going down. So the reason this is so important is if you look at it between 1995, oil, how much was oil in 1995? Anybody know? It was approximately $10. Today, 2005, it's about $60 a barrel. And they can say to you there's no inflation. And the reason they can say there's no inflation is because we have no financial education in our schools. We have basically a population that is financially not too smart, even though they have a good education. So they're telling you there's no inflation, but asset prices are going up. How many people right now are worried that maybe your children's children may not be able to afford a home because they keep going up in price? They just keep going up, but they have to get smaller and all this stuff. Because asset prices are going up, but consumer prices are going down, and that's why they can say there's no inflation. And that's why saving money doesn't make any sense. For one big reason, the government can print money faster than you can save it. On top of that, during this period of time when inflation was running, same time inflation was running at 50%, banks were paying you 1% interest on your money. And yet those financial advisors will tell you should save money because of the magic of compounding. Well, let me tell you, this is compounding a lot faster than this thing here. So I'm not saying that this is the truth. You know, watch the price of oil, watch the price of gold. If you see gold drop into $100 an ounce, maybe you should save money. or the government's not printing any more money. But this is stupid. To save money when these trends are going on, it makes no sense. That makes sense, you guys here? So that's why I don't save money. I've been saving gold since 1996. The other part about this right here is this, is that between 1995 and 2005, these guys lost $7 to $9 trillion. The Economist, the magazine I subscribe to, The Economist said during the same period when those people were losing $7 to $9 trillion was the biggest financial bubble in the history of the world. That's why Kenny has made money, Scott has made money, I've made money. The reason we made fortunes is we were not in the stock market. We were not in savings. We were not in bonds. We were not doing what our financial planner said to do. We were doing exactly the opposite. And the reason it works differently here is this, is because the people that were making money, if you look at it this way, the chart, the stock market from 1995 to 2005, the stock market went like this, spiked, and went down. Same period of time, gold, oil, and real estate went like this. So the people that were in real estate, gold, and oil, basically commodities, made a fortune. The reason that happens is this, is every 20 years the market changes. So this market here in gold and real estate should go up to about 2020 and head back down again, and then stocks will come back up again. That's basically the running trends. But they didn't tell the investors who were in mutual funds that. That's why so many people took a hammering at that time. Now the other part about it is this, the people that won were the debtors, not the savers. How many people in this room wish you had bought more real estate in 1995? How many people wish you were in debt up to your eyeballs with real estate? You know what I mean? That's the difference there. If you had bought real estate back in 1995, which is when I was buying as much as I could, that's when it took off. Also, in 1996, I started my gold mine in China, and I've always invested in oil because I used to be an employee of Standard Oil for a few months. But that's why I understand these markets. I'm a commodities guy, not a stock and paper bond, paper guy like that. So those are some of the big differences. So the thing about get out of debt, this is really bad advice. To save money and get out of debt when the market trends are going like this is really stupid. You should be getting into debt for something like this and getting out of debt for something like this. But one of the biggest lessons my rich dad taught me was the difference between there is good debt versus what? Hello, good debt versus what? Bad debt. Very simple as this. Good debt makes you rich. Bad debt makes you poor. And as I said earlier, the reason that most people in the middle class and the poor are struggling is what they spend their money on, is they're spending money on things that are in bad debt, things that are consumer items, not asset items. And that's the big difference. So I'd like to bring up, this is a very important subject because debt goes both ways. I'm going to bring up another attorney friend of mine. He's one of Rich Dad advisors. Is Garrett Sutton. Garrett is he's written 2 books. One is Own Your Own Corporation.
Right.
Well, what I want you to have a talk about is the ABCs of getting out of debt. Okay.
Americans love scores. All right. What's the Yankees score? What's the Lakers score? We love scores, but there's one score that you don't pay attention to enough, and that's your FICO score. All right. That is your personal scoreboard for borrowing money and using the credit system. And this book talks about how to maximize the system. Now on the chart there, a 450 score is low and an 850 score is high. What do you need for a 450 score? There are 2 things. Does anybody know what you need? A social security number and a pulse. All right? That will give you a 450 score. But if you have a 450 score, what kind of borrowing power do you have? 0. And you will find yourself paying more money for utilities, for auto loans, for all sorts of things you need to get by in our society today. So you need to know how to win this game. You need to know how to get your FICO score up to 700, up to 800, and then you can take advantage of our credit system.
Could I say one more thing? This
Sure.
is the most important. The reason I wanted Garrett to talk about this is one of the problems with having bad debt is you don't get good debt.
Well, and that's the point, is I want you to get out of bad debt so you can start using good debt. If you have a low FICO score, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the good debt opportunities. You need to get out of bad debt so you can get into the good debt program here that Robert's talking about and start improving your financial future by investing in real estate, oil, and commodities.
Right. And the biggest problem with people with bad debt is that they think that by borrowing money in this real estate market is the way to get out of it, and they just make the matters worse. I've met so many people who are trying to get into the real estate market or any kind of market or gold when they have bad debt. I said the first thing you should wipe out is that bad debt, because if you're a moron with bad debt, you'll probably be a moron with good debt too, you know, so you want to get out of both of it. And I've been in debt, you know, I mean, I've sold people. American Express has had me on their most wanted list at times, you know, when I lost a company back in the 70s. But it was one of the best things I ever did, was really work my way out. It was almost $1 million. It was almost working my way out of this was one of the best things I ever did, because it made me appreciate this, but it also made me a lot smarter. So.
Well, and Robert, you and Kim provide the example of how you got out of debt, the bad debt, in this book. It's a great example. It can be done by anyone. There are simple steps you can take to get out of bad debt. Don't let people tell you, though, that it can be done in 30 days. It takes a while to get out of bad debt.
$1 million took a while. It took a while.
So the point is that you're going to use these strategies to get out of bad debt so you can take advantage of the good debt opportunities that are out there. Kenny, Scott, they both mentioned there is money out there. There are people willing to invest in good projects. Take advantage of that. Get out of bad debt, start using good debt.
Thank you. Big hand for Garrett, please. Thank you. So I said the average person who's a passive investor, you know, they believe in saving money and getting out of debt. The next one is invest for the long term. And the reason I think that's really silly is very simply because as a passive investor, you don't know what long term means. But as an active investor, I need to know the difference between commissions versus what? Fees. And the difference here is this, is when I buy a piece of real estate, I may pay a 6% commission. But if I start investing in a mutual fund or one of those funds, I pay fees forever. So let's say I start when I'm 25 and I go till I'm 65. Every quarter or every year, I'm paying a fee to the mutual fund company. With real estate, I pay it once, and that's all I have to pay. So I don't mind a person making money, but what I object to, I mean, anybody, if they're taking fees and I'm not making any money, I think that's highly unethical. You know, at least with my real estate commissions, I have some control over that. Does that make sense, you guys here? So one of the biggest things about mutual funds, and that's what this book says here, Unconventional Success, is the reason mutual funds don't work is very simply because they're just taking too many fees out. And the worst thing about it is that the mutual fund companies do not have to provide you with a financial statement, so you never know how high their expenses are. So to me, it's only a mutual fund company can only operate because we have financially illiterate or financially unsophisticated investors. I personally don't want to just give somebody my money for 40 years and they take a fee off of it every year. That makes no sense to me. That makes sense to you guys here? So then the last thing here is diversify, diversify, diversify. How many people have heard diversify? Good. Diversify, there's another word for it, it's called diversify, you know? And rather than take my word for it, because I don't diversify, I selectively look hard until I find one great investment. And when I find that great investment, I strike on it. But I will not just buy a whole bunch of junk. But don't take my word for it again. Listen to what Warren Buffett says about the word diversify or diversify. He says, diversification is protection against ignorance. It makes little sense for those that know what they are doing. And he's the world's greatest investor. So that's Kenny came up here, he's looking at 30 deals a day or a week, whatever he's looking at. I'm constantly looking at deals. You don't buy every single one of them. But the thing about, the reason they say is protection against ignorance, in my opinion, is the ignorance of the person selling you the investment. And why I say that is most people selling mutual funds are on this side of the equation here. They couldn't tell you a good investment from a bad investment. So it's actually protection from them. If you diversify and the market crashes, they can say, well, I protected him. but they're also protecting who? Themselves. And that's why that I don't really support diversification. What I support instead, if you're an active investor, is this word here, is I focus. I'm looking for that deal, constantly looking for it. And what focus stands for is follow one course until successful. And what I mean by that is there's several things. As I look and look and look until I find what I want. But also when I was learning how to be a real estate investor, I stayed with it, stayed with it, stayed with it, stayed with it until I was pretty good at it. And then I moved on to some other kind of investment. I don't diversify. The problem with diversification is this, is if the market crashes and you get wiped out in your 401k, your retirement plan, your financial planner will not give you a money-back guarantee. So let's say it crashes when you're 55 years old. By diversifying or following this advice, you're not any smarter than when you started. You have no experience, so you cannot recover. Does that make sense, you guys here? So I'd rather learn to invest and focus and buy what I want to buy, even though I make some mistakes early on in my life, and that way I don't have to make the mistakes again. So that's a very big difference. So let me just say this much. If you have low financial education, follow this advice. Work hard, save money, get out of debt, invest for long-term, diversify. This is great advice for passive investors who just turn their money over to somebody they hope is smarter than they are. But if you want to be an active investor, then you focus, you follow one course until successful. So just say it one more time, as I did real estate for a long time, and then over here on the fast track of the cash flow game, I started doing IPOs, I started funding companies. I just kept practicing, but I stayed with it until I was successful. And that's the difference. The reason I stay back with real estate, I enjoy it, and bankers give me a lot of money for it, so it's nice and easy, and it's really easy to find a deal. I'd like to give credit for the person that gave me this. My rich dad always said focus, but follow one course until successful came from a group called Winners Camp in Hawaii, where they take young people and they train them to focus, not diversify. So basically that's why this advice here I think is very bad financial advice if you're an active investor, but it's very good advice if you're going to be a passive investor. And that completes this part of the section, and when we come back we'll go into how to have more control over your investments. Thank you very much.